Have you ever been in a moment where someone said something hurtful to you in public, and all you could do was sit there speechless? Maybe it was at a family gathering or during a meeting, or even just standing in line at the store. They might have made a snide remark, laughed a little too loudly at your expense, or brushed off your words like they meant nothing. And for a split second, it felt like the whole room turned against you. That heavy silence, that knot in your chest, that wish that you had said something, anything, in return. If that's ever happened to you, I want you to know this: you're not alone. It doesn't matter how old we get, being humiliated never gets easier. But here's the truth no one tells you. You don't need to shout, argue, or defend yourself to get your respect back. In fact, real power comes when you learn to rise quietly, firmly, and with dignity. That's where a calm and resilient mindset becomes such a powerful guide. It isn't about being emotionless or cold. It's about learning to respond instead of react, to stay rooted when the world tries to shake you, and to build a life so solid that no insult can topple it. And the beautiful thing? This way of thinking is something anyone can develop, especially those of us who've lived long enough to know which battles are worth fighting. So today, I want to talk with you about how to truly regain respect after someone has humiliated you, without shouting, without revenge, and certainly without lowering yourself to their level. Let's begin with the foundation of it all, your response in the moment. It's tempting, isn't it? To react quickly when someone puts you down. Maybe fire back with a sharp remark or explain yourself so the others don't get the wrong idea. But when you do that, you're playing their game. You're giving them what they want: your energy, your emotion, your peace. There's a powerful reminder worth holding on to. You always have the power to choose your response. That's your strength. That's your leverage. When someone tries to humiliate you, the greatest power move is stillness. Imagine this. Someone throws an insult at you across the room, loud enough for others to hear. Instead of jumping up to argue or letting your emotions get the best of you, you pause. You breathe. And then you offer nothing but a calm expression. Not because you're weak, but because you've already decided that their words aren't worth your peace. You don't owe them a comeback. You don't owe them your mood. That moment of silence, it speaks volumes. I remember a gentleman I once spoke with. Let's call him Mr. James. He was in his 70s and told me about a time at his church during a social gathering. Another member, much younger, made a sarcastic joke about James being too old-fashioned to understand a technology project the group was working on. People laughed. It stung. But James didn't say a word. He smiled gently, nodded, and continued pouring coffee. Later that week, he sent out an email to the entire group, breaking down the project in simple steps and offering help to anyone who needed it. He didn't need to defend his dignity. He demonstrated it. And the same people who laughed? They were the ones thanking him days later. That's the quiet strength of character, letting your actions speak where your words are no longer welcome. The second key is even more powerful. Do not reward disrespect with attention. This is hard, I know, especially when someone hurts us in front of others. It can feel personal, like an attack on who we are. But often people who try to embarrass others are simply seeking control. They want a reaction. They want you to flinch, to argue, to show them that they've gotten under your skin. That gives them power. So, when you deny them that satisfaction, when you look away, change the subject, or calmly move on, you take that power back. I once had a neighbor, a retired teacher, who told me something that stuck with me. Silence is not weakness, it's strategy. She said that in her years of working in classrooms full of loud teenagers, she learned the best way to quiet a class wasn't to shout over them. It was to wait, to stay calm, to hold her ground, and to let the silence do the talking. The same applies to life. When someone tries to humiliate you, they expect you to fight back. Don't. Let them feel the weight of your silence. Let them stand there waiting for a reaction that never comes. You don't have to pretend it doesn't hurt. You're human. But the goal is not to suppress your feelings, it's to channel them. Take that energy, that sting, and pour it into something that uplifts you. That's the third step. Transform the pain into progress. When someone disrespects you, let it be a wake-up call, not to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right. Get a little sharper. Get a little stronger. Return to that project you've been putting off, that book you wanted to write, that walk you've meant to take every morning but haven't. Don't do it for them. Do it for your pride, your dignity, your peace. There's something deeply satisfying about quiet progress. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to post it on social media or bring it up at the next family dinner. Just build, grow, improve. Let them notice it when they least expect it. And by then, it won't even matter to you whether they notice or not. Because the person you've become will no longer be seeking their approval. You'll already have your own. When we reach a certain age, we often begin to realize how precious our energy is. And spending it on people who thrive on tearing others down, that's a waste we can't afford. There's nothing more powerful than a person who knows their worth, moves with calm intention, and lets their life speak for them. So the next time someone humiliates you or makes a rude comment in front of others, remember this: your silence, your growth, your quiet dignity, that is your comeback. Not words, not arguments, but the unwavering strength that comes from within. Now that we've laid the foundation with silence, dignity, and quiet progress, let's talk about something even more subtle, but equally powerful. How we choose to deal with the people who try to tear us down, and just as importantly, those who stood by and said nothing. Because when someone humiliates you in public, your first instinct might be to focus on the person who delivered the blow. But over time, you start to notice something else: the reactions of the people around you. Who laughed? Who looked away? Who shifted uncomfortably but said nothing? And maybe most importantly, who said they cared about you before, but didn't lift a finger when it really mattered? It's a hard truth, but it's one we need to talk about. Sometimes the deepest hurt doesn't come from the insult itself, but from the silence that followed. From the so-called friend who chuckled along, the relative who looked down and stirred their coffee, or the colleague who didn't want to get involved. These people, knowingly or not, made a choice. They chose comfort over character. Now, here's where true wisdom comes in. You don't need to call them out. You don't need a grand confrontation or a dramatic farewell. What you need is clarity. And with clarity comes action. Quiet action. Distance. Because the company you keep after humiliation speaks volumes about how much you respect yourself. If someone laughed when you were hurt, or stood by without support, and you continue sharing your time, your kindness, your presence with them, it sends a message. Not just to them, but to you. That their behavior was tolerable. That it was okay. And let me be clear, it wasn't. You've spent decades learning about life. You've loved, lost, worked hard, and seen more than most people ever will. That experience alone deserves respect. And if someone close to you can't offer that, if they can't choose loyalty over laughter, you don't need to make space for them in your life. This doesn't mean bitterness. It doesn't mean holding grudges or seeking revenge. It means choosing peace over pretense. It means creating a space where your dignity isn't up for debate. And it means making room for people who see you clearly and treat you kindly, even when no one else is watching. There's a quiet kind of strength in knowing who to walk away from without anger. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to post about it or make announcements. Just begin to step back. Stop reaching out. Let them feel the absence of your warmth, your wisdom, your presence. And believe me, they will. And while we're here, let's talk about something else that's deeply human: the urge to make them regret it. Not just the ones who stood by, but the one who started it all. Now, this is where we walk a fine line. Wanting someone to feel regret isn't evil. It's natural. especially when their words cut deep. But how we go about it, that's where the difference lies. Some people chase revenge. Others chase transformation. Choose transformation. Let me tell you about a man I met at a local cafe. Retired, in his 60s, always reading. One day, he shared something that stuck with me. Early in his career, he was humiliated by a manager who mocked his ideas during a team presentation. Publicly. People laughed. He was crushed. But he didn't quit. He didn't argue. He just got to work. He took every tough assignment, stayed late, read more, learned more. And a few years later, he was promoted past that very same manager. He told me, I never had to get back at him. My success did all the talking. That's what we're aiming for here. Not revenge that screams, but evolution that whispers and wins. When someone puts you down, don't let it define you. Let it drive you. Take on the things you've been meaning to do. Pick up that hobby you've put aside. Volunteer. Write that memoir. Get healthier. Sharpen your mind. Grow in ways they never saw coming. That's what real regret looks like. Not them seeing you fight back, but seeing you thrive in a way that makes their cruelty look small and foolish in hindsight. And here's something else. Don't block them out completely. I know that might sound strange, but sometimes the best revenge is letting them see you shine. Let them see you still walking into a room with confidence. Let them hear your name spoken with admiration. Let them witness your glow up, one quiet success at a time. When people underestimate you, they expect you to stay down. So when you rise, gracefully, intentionally, unapologetically, it unsettles them. And it should. Because you've done something they never imagined. You've turned their insult into fuel. Now, all of this only works if you have one thing in place: your standards. That invisible line that says, this is what I tolerate. This is what I won't. It's not about being rigid. It's about being rooted. People often confuse kindness with weakness, especially in older adults. They assume that just because we don't raise our voices or bark back, we must not have limits. But oh, how wrong they are. Having standards doesn't mean being rude. It means being firm. It means that the next time someone makes a joke at your expense, you don't just smile it off if it crosses the line. You don't explain. You don't justify. You say, with calm and clarity, that's not something I find funny. And then you move on. You don't owe second chances to those who test your dignity. And you certainly don't owe continued friendship to those who turn your personal life into a punchline. When you let your standards guide your response, not your emotions, something beautiful happens. People start adjusting the way they treat you. Not because you demanded respect, but because you commanded it. Through presence, through poise, through quiet conviction. You may lose a few people along the way. That's okay. Not everyone is meant to stay. But what you gain in exchange is priceless. Your self-respect, your peace of mind, and a circle that actually deserves your wisdom, your company, and your kindness. Because at this stage in life, peace is non-negotiable. Time is precious. And there's no room left for people who make you feel small. And perhaps that's the most important thing to remember. After a certain point in life, you realize how valuable your presence truly is. You've earned your voice. You've walked through more storms than many people have even seen. You've learned, sometimes the hard way, what matters and what doesn't. So when someone humiliates you, they're not just disrespecting your words in the moment. They're disregarding your entire journey. And that deserves a response rooted in strength, not spite. This brings us to something simple, yet deeply empowering: speaking once and never again. You see, the world today is noisy. Everyone's shouting over each other, defending themselves, trying to prove a point. But real confidence? It doesn't beg to be heard. It knows that one well-placed sentence can do more than 100 justifications. If someone humiliates you and you choose to say something, make it count. Don't speak from anger. Speak from calm. Say it clearly. Say it with backbone. And then say no more. Let your silence afterward carry the weight of your words. I remember meeting a woman, maybe in her late 60s, who told me about an incident at a community center where a newer member made a rude comment about her age, joking that she was probably too old to keep up with technology. Everyone chuckled nervously, waiting to see what she'd say. She looked at him, smiled, and replied, "That's a funny thing to say when you just asked me how to connect to the Wi-Fi." And then she turned away, completely unbothered. The room laughed, but not at her. The power shifted, not because she shouted, not because she got defensive, but because she spoke once, with wit and confidence, and never gave the moment any more energy than it deserved. That's the kind of strength that leaves a lasting impression. And it's something we all have inside us. The ability to choose our words with intention, to deliver them with grace, and then let it go. Let others stew in their own assumptions. You don't owe anyone an explanation after that. Not when they've already shown they weren't listening to understand in the first place. This kind of restraint isn't about suppressing yourself. It's about protecting your peace. And peace, at this stage in life, is something you should never give away cheaply. So what do you do with the anger? With the sting that sometimes lingers long after the moment has passed? You use it. You turn it into quiet determination, into deeper self-respect, into action. Because let's be honest, nothing leaves a stronger impression on the people who once mocked you than seeing you grow into someone untouchable, someone unshaken, someone who not only bounced back but moved so far forward they can't even reach you anymore. And here's the beauty of it. You don't need a spotlight for that kind of growth. You don't need to post about it or announce your progress. Just live it. Let it show in the way you speak, the way you carry yourself, the way you no longer engage in petty conversations or give energy to shallow people. When you walk into a room and hold your head high, not out of arrogance, but out of peace, people feel it. They notice. And those who once tried to make you feel small, they'll start to feel their own insecurity in your presence. Not because you punished them, but because your glow is now too bright to ignore. That's the silent redemption. That's the moment when you realize you've won, not by fighting, but by evolving. And if there's one final thing to leave you with, it's this. You don't need everyone to like you. Not anymore. That need fades with time. What matters is that you like the person you've become, that you honor your experiences, that you trust your voice, and that you keep your dignity intact, even when someone tries to take it from you. Because people will talk. People will laugh. And yes, some will humiliate others just to feel big. But that says everything about them and nothing about you. You don't have to shrink to make others comfortable. You don't have to explain your worth. You just have to stand tall in your truth, enforce your boundaries, and walk away from anyone who can't treat you with basic decency. And when the day comes, because it always does, when that same person tries to make small talk again, tries to brush the past under the rug or pretend they didn't mean it, you'll know exactly what to do. You smile. You offer nothing more, because they are no longer part of your life. Not really. They've been demoted from a participant to a bystander. And that shift, that decision, that's yours. You don't gain respect by demanding it. You gain it by embodying it, every single day. So let them laugh. Let them gossip. Let them wonder how they lost access to someone as steady, as strong, as self-assured as you. Because while they stayed the same, you chose growth. While they tried to dim your light, you turned it into a fire. And by the time they finally understand what they lost, well, by then, you'll be too far ahead to look back. At some point, you stop chasing respect and start living in a way that naturally attracts it. You stop trying to explain who you are, and instead, you just show it. In how you walk, how you carry yourself, how you respond when someone tries to bring you down. This is the gift of time, of experience. You learn that the loudest response isn't always the most effective. Sometimes it's the calm head that turns the most heads. It's the one who doesn't bite the bait, who doesn't stoop down to insults, who doesn't trade self-respect for the fleeting satisfaction of being right. You've lived long enough to know this. Some people don't want resolution, they want reaction. They want you to bark back, to flail, to explain yourself into exhaustion. But when you deny them that and choose stillness, dignity, clarity, they're left with nothing to hold on to. And that is far more unsettling to them than any comeback you could offer. Think of the tree that's weathered every season. It doesn't panic when the wind picks up. It bends. It holds. It lets the storm pass and stands even taller the next day. That's you now. You don't need to prove your roots. You just need to stay grounded. And maybe that's the greatest lesson we learn as we grow older. That emotions are not enemies, but they do need direction. That peace is not found in the absence of conflict, but in the choice not to let conflict change you. That respect isn't earned by force. It's earned through quiet strength, unwavering self-worth, and the boundaries you refuse to bend. It's in the conversations you don't have, the arguments you walk away from, the people you let go without bitterness, the moments when your silence says more than 1,000 words ever could. And if you're wondering whether that strength is too late to build, whether at 60 or 70 or even 80, you should know this. It is never too late to reclaim your power. It is never too late to decide who you will and will not allow in your life. And it is never too late to be respected again. In fact, now may be the perfect time. Because with age comes perspective. You've seen what matters and what doesn't. You've loved and lost, succeeded and stumbled. And every wrinkle, every scar, every story, you earned that. You deserve to walk into every room with quiet confidence, knowing that your presence is not something to be questioned. It's something to be honored. So if someone ever tries to make you feel small again, remember this. Your job is not to fight for space. Your job is to be so rooted in who you are that the room rearranges itself around your presence. And if no one stands up for you, stand for yourself. With grace, with stillness, with standards that say, I've come too far in life to be treated like this. Because you have. And to those who laughed or watched and said nothing, or tried to walk back into your life like nothing happened, they don't need a response. They need distance. Not because you're angry, but because you're done. Done explaining. Done shrinking. Done tolerating less than you deserve. Let them live with what they did. Let them wonder why you don't return the call. Why you moved on so quietly. Why their presence no longer earns a seat at your table. And let your life, your calm, resilient, beautifully evolving life, be your only response. Because you don't need applause. You need peace. You don't need revenge. You need results. And when you finally speak, let it be with the way you live, the way you rise, the way you move forward without ever looking back. That is how you gain respect after being humiliated. You rise with your head high. You walk with quiet pride. And you live in such a way that the people who once tried to tear you down have no choice but to look up. So here's to you, the one who refuses to shrink. To the one who chooses silence over drama. To the one who keeps building, healing, growing. No matter what they said, no matter how they laughed, no matter how alone you felt in that moment. You're not alone anymore. You've got your strength. And that is more than enough. If this message spoke to you, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Tell me, what moment made you realize your worth? When did you choose to rise instead of react? And if you found this helpful, give this video a like and consider subscribing for more wisdom, strength, and truth, delivered straight from the heart. Here's to living your best life at any age. You've earned that. and you deserve nothing less.